challenge of cybersecurity, what it really means in today's world. And then I want to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the innovators and the entrepreneurs in cybersecurity history. And I'd be remiss if I didn't spend a little bit of time also kind of discussing some of the simple principles of security regimes, how we solve problems with these simple principles. Hopefully this goes a long way to helping you solve problems as you start to look at these from a problem statement perspective. And then finally, I want to get disruptive because that's ultimately what entrepreneurs should be doing. We'll start off with the challenges of cyber. Now, really, we're in a new era, and up until recently in our history, a thief had to incur the very real threat of risk of injury or death to pursue his trade. Is this burglar getting decked by the 77-year-old former boxer can attest? But the cyber world's different. In this new era, an anonymous individual or group a half a world away can bring down hospitals, oil refineries, or even cities. Like every new era, this new era needs inventors and inventions to solve new and unique problems. It needs people like you. And the risks are profound. Even in a pandemic year, cyber risks occupy one of the top 3 spots on almost all global risk indexes. And even more mind-boggling are the economic costs. According to Cybercrime magazine, the economic costs will hit $6 trillion annually by the end of 2021. It's truly astronomical. Just as sobering, according to Gallup, 1 in 4 Americans have been victimized by cybercrime or will be victimized again in the next year, and 63% of US businesses have taken a hit. This should be sobering as you sit down at the Thanksgiving table or the holiday tables coming up here this holiday with friends and family and realize that 1 in 4 of them will be impacted or victimized by a cyber crime. So what are we to do? Let's start by taking a look at some of the entrepreneurs and inventors and innovators in cyber history. The first story is Thomas Phillips. Now, 1577 seems like it was a long time before the computer age, and it was. But it's important to remember that computers themselves aren't inherently all that valuable. It's what they store and process that has value. Everything from your online identity to the heart rate monitor and the neonatal ward. So cybersecurity is information security. And that story goes back, well, to the dawn of time. In 1577, Phillips liked to solve problems and became one of the earliest famous or infamous, depending on which cream you supported, cryptanalysts. Because of his prowess with puzzles and cryptography, Phillips was commissioned by Queen Elizabeth's principal secretary, Lord Walsingham, to crack the secret encrypted messages that Elizabeth's cousin, Mary Queen of Scots, had been exchanging with her loyal subjects. Now, Lord Walsingham had already gained confessions from Queen Mary's co-conspirators and knew that Queen Mary was at the center of a plot to assassinate the English Queen Elizabeth. But Queen Elizabeth wanted rock-solid evidence that her cousin Mary was indeed the central player in the assassination plot before she would allow for a conviction. A tale of betrayal and subterfuge fit for a queen, Mary Queen of Scots, lost her head, literally, because she was perhaps the first famous case to find out quite painfully that bad encryption is worse than no encryption at all. Now, fast forward almost 400 years to 1941, and you may recall the story of Alan Turing from the 2014 movie The Imitation Game, for example, which portrayed Turing famously cracking the German Enigma machine, at the time one of the most complex cryptographic systems ever created. You can see it here on the right. Sadly, we don't have the time to do Turing's story justice, but suffice it to say that historians believe that Turing, perhaps more than anyone, changed the tide of World War II in the Allies' favor. But in addition to being an instrumental figure in the Allies' defeat of Nazi Germany, Turing's legacy lives on today. Can anyone think of what we do almost daily in the online space that contains Turing's name and the acronym? Well, that would be the CAPTCHA, the completely automated public Turing test to tell computers and humans apart. You probably participate in these CAPTCHA events daily. Sometimes it's picking a tile with traffic lights, and sometimes it's picking the squiggly numbers. But interestingly enough, this came at the dawn of the computer era with the work that Turing did. Fast forward to 2003, and the first open source hypervisor called Zen was released, and the world was hearing a new buzz around this concept called virtualization. The next year in 2004, Ashir Aziz had an idea. Could virtualization be used to solve cybersecurity problems? Was it possible to instantly spawn multiple virtual machines to analyze and crunch security events from multiple vectors at the same time? Aziz was onto something and invented the multi-vector virtual execution engine, which later became FireEye Technologies. And where by chance have we heard of FireEye? Well, from none other than the most historical breaches in our times. FireEye played a central role in detecting the new era of the retail breach in 2013 with Target, and more recently, the new era in the supply chain breach with the 2020 solar wind supply chain breach. Now that we've established a short history of innovators and entrepreneurs in cybersecurity, my job would be incomplete if I didn't spend a few minutes reviewing a few of the fundamental principles of security regimes. And some of these are with a twist of Nickisms, perhaps, me being Nick, but the reality is these are all fundamental principles that have existed throughout time. Now, interestingly enough, it's important to understand that these fundamental principles of security apply to all security regimes, from home security to bank security to national security, and of course, in our world, to cybersecurity. We'll start off with the first one. That's called the Principle of Least Privilege. Principle of Least Privilege, often called PULP, is a paradigm where an information user is granted exactly the privilege needed to conduct their work and not announce more. The reality is that privilege creep is a real thing, and its effects are easily targeted by criminals. So as you consider solutions to cyber problems, keep in mind that the root causes and thus the root solutions to cyber problems are often deeper than the problem itself. The next principle that we'll talk about is the principle of entropy. Now, you may remember this concept from science. According to the Oxford Dictionary, entropy is a lack of order or predictability, a gradual decline into disorder. Snobby academics might call this software rot. Actually, that's not snobby academics, that's our media. It's often referred to this as software rot, but academics have written dissertations on the subject, such as this one by Michael P. Cole, called The Theory of Entropic Security Decay, the Gradual Degradation and Effectiveness of Commission Security Systems. And I can attest from personal experience that this is real. In my experience, the moment a secure system is deployed, forces of nature and mankind begin to degrade it, and if decay is not addressed, a compromise is inevitable. This brings us to our next principle, the principle of uniformity. Now, while entropy explains why systems become unsecure, the principle of uniformity often offers a strong and compelling answer. So what is the principle of uniformity? Well, this one's easy. What is one commonality in all malicious attack types? It's that an anomaly occurred. Something different happened, something out of the ordinary. Someone was somewhere where they shouldn't have been. Find Waldo. Waldo's become famous because he is hard to find. He gets lost in the crowd and the puzzles are challenging because there is a great deal of noise and variation in the Waldo puzzles. Now, cyber criminals like to hide in noise and contrast as well, but they are detectable, and we can use the principle of uniformity to make it easier. When we make everything uniform, e.g. we reduce noise and variation, it becomes much easier to spot the anomaly. The concept here is simple. If within your security ecosystem, all of your systems look the same, it's easy for computer-based systems to identify what is different, what doesn't belong, what's abnormal. In the simplest of terms, this means if you're using Java, try to use all the same Java versions. If you're using Microsoft Office, try to use all of the same versions, because it's very easy for your computer system to detect when something is out of the norm. If everything is variant and everything is noisy, that becomes much more difficult. The next principle that we'll look at is called the principle of compartmentalization. How many of you have seen a bank vault? In a movie, they often look like this, but in most cases, they look like this. One big vault with many small vaults inside. This is compartmentalization or risk segmentation, is how we often refer to it as. We do this in many areas of information security. Networks are microsegmented, platforms are virtualized, and applications are containerized as microservices. But it also exists in other areas. For example, in the bulkheads of a submarine. You can see, for example, how microsegmentation works to keep a submarine safe and floating in the event of a breach. And this is very similar from a concept perspective in all other security regimes, including cybersecurity. Of course, there are a number of other fundamental principles of security. And as you consider various solutions to your problem statements, I would encourage you to do a quick review of these and other fundamental precepts. Well, let's keep our wrap-up simple. Let's get disruptive. For the entrepreneur, the beauty of information technology is that the creative destruction cycle is governed by a Moore's Law-esque pattern of 3-ish-year cycles, so the future is bright for you as entrepreneurs. I want to thank you, and I wish you the best of luck as you proceed, and I can't wait to see what you come up with. Rob?
We got two co-founders, okay, and both want to do predictive analytics for farmers. So they want to have some type of software that helps farmers have the analytics to grow more efficient crops. Okay, to do that, one founder strongly believes that we should do this via drone mechanisms, meaning like, let's do a drone and we're going to scan the farm fields using drone technology. The other one is going to be focused on, the other founder wants to focus on satellite. They think for whatever reason, satellite imagery is going to be better than the drone. Both of them agree though, this is the end product. Like we want to have the dashboard that be able to tell, you know, the farmer what's working, what's not working in the analytics. So here's the question, who's right? And where, if you were in this situation here and you're Monday of a competition, how do you know which one is right and which one's wrong? Do you go with the drone or do you go with the satellite imagery? Okay, so what I want to focus on for this competition is you're going to focus on neither. We don't care this week specifically. We don't care about actually drone versus satellite. What we care about is, would the farmer actually like the dashboard? That's the key, because from a farmer's perspective, it doesn't matter if you got the picture via drone or satellite, as long as this data is good and as long as this data is accurate and it's actually helpful, and that's probably the key word, is like it actually moves the needle, is helpful. This is what the farmer cares about. And so I know with engineers, a lot of times we focus on, we pride ourselves on like the method of how we do things. And while yes, we need to have a method, we're focusing on more of the output. What is the actual value? And so when I take this to a farmer, I can say, do you like this dashboard? Is it a good dash? Like, forget how I got the data. Is this helpful? To do that, to start out and kind of have, you know, understand values, we're gonna do customer discovery today. So customer discovery is one of the first steps you do when you're launching a startup. You're asking questions to real customers. Essentially, a competition like this, you're essentially like hacking entrepreneurship, because normally if you were to do some type of software, you could spend the majority of your time just trying to figure out what's a legitimate problem that people are willing to pay for. I know when I launched my software, like it took us almost 3.5 years. We kept making iterations and pivoting, but it took us 3.5 years to actually figure out a consistent revenue stream where people were going to pay. And it took me another 3.5 years to figure out where they were going to really pay, where it was like actually substantial money. Couple tips when we're talking to people, especially today. We focus on in-person interviews, not surveys. And the reason why is because this very principle here. If I asked you, well, Nick, we'll use Nick Miller. So Nick, ask me how my day was.
Ryan, how was your day today?
It was great. Okay, now ask me again.
Ryan, how was your day today?
It was great. I gave the exact same words. If you were to take a survey over SurveyMonkey or do a Facebook poll, you would not tell the difference between customer A and customer B. Okay, but the first one was like, yeah, it was great. Like you can tell by the body language, no, it wasn't great. You're just you know, putting a facade on. The second one, you can legitimately tell it's great. Okay, so that's why we don't do surveys. We got to see like there's a guy named Steve Blank. He's kind of like one of the founders of Lean Startup Principles, which we'll be teaching over the week. But essentially, he said like you got to look at their pupils. Like they should dilate if they get excited. If they're just like, yeah, whatever, that'd be cool, then you haven't hit the mark. Okay, so that's why we do in-person interviews. The second reason why we do in-person interviews is going off-roading on questions. This is one of the skill sets that hopefully you continue to develop, but for some of you, you might be starting this for the first time. This is where if I ask Nick a question and he gives me an answer, I'd be like, wait, tell me a little bit more about that. Like, I don't quite understand that. Can you help me clarify that? The more you can actually go off the record of like, here's the 6 questions that I'm going to ask everyone, and you start filling in the blanks so you truly understand. That's the value of in-person interviews. Once again, if I do a Facebook poll, if you give me some answer that I'm not sure about, I have no ability to actually deep dive and understand more. I can't emphasize enough, like customer interviews, it's not that you have just like data points. Like if you came to us at Venture College and said like 7 out of 10 people said blank, okay, great. But me and Nick want to know, like, what did you actually learn? Like, what are the ahas? What's that knowledge that you learned that's like, yeah, that's going to drive my business, or that's going to really drive my idea. I've never seen the best ideas getting driven off because 70% of people said blank. It just doesn't happen. It could be one person with one really good comment that all of a sudden gives you insight. Okay, in terms of tonight, the golden rule of asking questions, if you want to actually be steered in the right direction, is no futuristic questions. Simply put, people lie, not purposefully, but people especially if you ask futuristic questions. So it's actually like a psychology portion of it. So if I ask Nick a historical question, he's actually like drawing on his memory. Okay, he's drawing on facts. So if I said, Nick, how many people went through the venture college incubator last year? He's going to be dialing in his brain somewhere of like, what is that number? And then give it to me. And then I can have further on questions. But as soon as we start going futuristic questions, Nick, what if there was blank? Or would you be interested in blank? And it's a futuristic thing. Then the mind actually goes more into the creative mode because it can't draw on facts. It can't draw on history. It's actually like painting a picture in real time. And so people are not like the answers they give you, even if it's like a good answer that you're looking for, would you be interested in a cybersecurity product that does blah, 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 blah? Like they're not going to give you a factual answer. And a lot of people, especially with startups, they applaud you that you're trying to do a startup or some type of entrepreneurship. And so a lot of people are like, give you the pat on the back, like, good job. And we'll actually watch a quick video about that. So no futuristic questions. If your questions are if there was, or would there be, or would you be interested in, just cut that out of your questions. And the last thing is when you're talking with your problem sponsors, especially for the sake of winning this competition, put your idea on hold at least for one night. So if you think you already have something and like the goal is to get validation tonight, that's not the method tonight. Tonight, you're just trying to understand the problem more. So I could ask questions like, what have you done in the past to solve this? Why haven't you done something to solve this? How did that work? Tell me more about it. I'm trying to just understand the past, and then I can follow up with future ideas with a mock-up. That's kind of the goal.